By Chenshi, the sky was bright. I sat upright in the bumpy bridal sedan, wearing the wedding gown that Mother had put on me with her own hands, its 100 birds paying homage to the phoenix pattern shimmering brilliantly in the sunlight. The phoenix crown on my head pressed down heavily, its gold and jade tassels swaying before my eyes with the jolting of the sedan. The streets were filled with the clamor of gongs and drums, and the discussions of the common folk rose and fell. Look, that is the new bride being welcomed by the Ministry of Revenue's Minister Manor. I hear she is the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, Gu Qingxin. Truly a good match between well-suited families. For the Prime Minister's daughter to marry down. What an honor this is for the Shen family. Listening to these words, the corners of my lips curved up unconsciously. Shen Mubai and I have known each other since childhood. We were childhood sweethearts. Our 7 years of affection were long past just romance. It was also the path to success I paved for him. From when he was the neglected second son of the Minister of Revenue's Manor, to now a vice minister with a boundless future, so much of my heart's blood was poured into what lies behind it. Today is the moment of harvest. The bridal sedan came to a steady stop in front of the minister's manor. By rights, the manor gates should be wide open at this moment, and the groom should personally step forward to shoot 3 arrows to seal fate. Then kick open the sedan door to welcome me out. However, the sound of gongs and drums outside the sedan gradually stopped, with only a few scattered string and bamboo instruments still playing awkwardly. I waited for a long time, but there was no movement at the sedan door. "What is going on?" the escorting Wang Mo asked anxiously in a hushed voice. "Please make sure you are in a comfortable position. The main story is about to begin. Reply in the comments and let us know what city everyone is reading our story from." Replying to Momo, "The gate of the minister's mansion is tightly shut," they said. They said young Master Shen has not yet returned. This sentence plunged the street into a dead silence instantly. My hands on my knees suddenly tightened, my nails digging deep into my palms. Not yet returned. Today is his wedding day. Where could he have gone? Time trickled by, like the cruelest form of torture. The sun overhead gradually rose higher, changing from a gentle morning glow to a scorching, harsh glare. The inside of the bridal sedan was stuffy like a steamer, and the weight of the phoenix coronet became unbearable at this moment, making my neck ache. The chatter from the common folk began to grow unrestrained. "Have you heard? Attendant Shen didn't want to marry the Prime Minister's daughter at all. He was forced to. Yeah, he has a childhood sweetheart, his cousin named Su Qingluo. That is his true love. HKT's Prime Minister's mansion has truly lost all face today." Those words were like poison-dipped needles, piercing fiercely into my heart through the gaps in the sedan's curtain. I once thought that those rumors about Su Qingluo were just idle gossip. Shen Mubai had personally promised me that Su Qingluo was just a frail younger sister who needed to be looked after, and that the bond between us was the one that was unforgettable. Turns out sweet talk is actually the sharpest lie in the world. A second hour passed, and the wedding procession could no longer hold on. The people sent by my father repeatedly went to the minister's mansion to negotiate, but the reply they always got was, "The young master has not returned, so we dare not open the mansion gates without permission." A third hour passed, and the sun was already setting in the west. Even the children by the roadside were singing the nursery rhyme. "The Prime Minister's daughter can't get married," blocking the sedan chair at the gate. Isn't it shameful? I finally gave up all hope. I slowly raised my hand, my fingertips ice cold, and gently brushed over the lifelike phoenix on my wedding dress. I once thought I would walk through life hand in hand with Shen Mubai, in perfect harmony. Now I finally understand. I was merely a play he put on for the world to see, a prop that could bring him glory but could be discarded at any time. 7 years of love and support ultimately couldn't compare to the ethereal white moonlight in his heart. I slowly took off the phoenix crown from my head and placed it on the brocade stool beside me. Once that heavy burden was gone, I felt a lightness all over, and even breathing became much smoother. I sat quietly, no longer listening to any sounds from outside. The land in my heart that was once filled with anticipation was now barren, leaving only a frozen wasteland. Shen Mubai, you gave me the grandest hope, and you gave me the ultimate humiliation. We need to settle this score properly. Number. Chapter 2. The prince arrives just when everyone thought this farce would end, with the prime minister's residence being utterly humiliated. A steady and extremely oppressive sound of hoofbeats approached from the distance, shattering the awkward dead silence in front of the minister's residence. The commoners automatically parted to the sides, escorted by a squad of black armored guards. A huge carriage made entirely of ebony inlaid with gold threads slowly approached like a mobile black palace. On the carriage, a princely banner embroidered with a fierce tiger howling at the moon fluttered in the wind. It is the Prince of Zhenbei Xiao Hanyuan, that new military noble who holds 300,000 troops in the northern border, who was enfoffed as a prince and appointed a general at the young age of 24, and is the subject of attention from the entire court. Why would he come here? A trace of doubt flashed through my mind. Then I calmed down again. No matter who it is, it has nothing to do with me anymore. The Prince of Zhenbei's carriage stopped beside my bridal sedan. The curtain was lifted, and a figure as tall and straight as a pine tree stepped out. He wore a black princely robe with a jade belt at his waist. His long hair was tied up with a golden crown, and his face was as cold and stern as if carved by a knife. His pair of deep eyes swept over the messy scene before him, without a ripple of emotion. Your Highness, 1,000 years. The steward sent by my father hurried forward to bow. Xiao Hanyuan didn't look at him, his gaze falling on that tightly shut, vermilion lacquered gate, his voice as cold as the wind and snow of the northern border. By His Majesty's verbal decree, the marriage alliance between the Chancellor's manor and the Minister's manor today is a model for the imperial court. There must not be the slightest mistake. If the Minister's manor dares to publicly break off the engagement, insulting the face of the imperial family and the Chancellor's manor, the Chancellor's legitimate daughter, Lady Guiyu, is permitted to choose another marriage partner. Once these words were spoken, the entire crowd was in an uproar. Xiao Hanyuan's gaze turned to my bridal sedan. His voice wasn't loud, but it reached my ears clearly. Miss Gu, this prince's manor happens to be lacking a hostess. If you are willing, this bridal sedan can be carried directly into the manor of the prince who pacifies the north. My whole body jolted. Xiao Hanyuan and I had only seen each other from a distance a few times at palace banquets. We had no connection. His action was definitely not to stand up for me. I instantly figured out the key points. Xiao Hanyuan's achievements were so great, they overshadowed his master, and the emperor was wary of him. My father, as the head of the civil officials, also needed to counterbalance the military's power. The emperor had probably long wanted to tie our two families together, but just lacked a pretext. Shen Mubai's foolishness today happened to give the emperor a heaven-sent opportunity, and also gave Xiao Hanyuan a chance to go with the flow and do the emperor a favor. He needed a princess consort from a clean background with a clear mind to be his political ally, and I needed a high enough platform to viciously pay back Shen Mubai and the entire minister's manor. We are the best trading partners. In the deathly silence of the sedan chair, I made a decision. I reached out with a trembling yet firm hand and yanked off the red veil on my head. The sunlight outside the sedan chair instantly pierced my eyes, and I squinted slightly, adjusting to the long, unseen light. Under everyone's shocked gazes, I slowly stepped out of the bridal sedan chair and stood on the bluestone slate road. I looked around. On the faces of the common people were all sorts of expressions: gloating, sympathetic, disdainful. The tightly shut gates of the Shangshu Manor were like a giant mouth mocking me. Finally, my gaze landed on Xiao Hanyuan's face. He was also looking at me. There was no pity in his eyes, only a kind of level scrutiny. Very good, I don't need pity. I raised my hand, brought the embroidered handkerchief to my lips, and bit down hard without a moment's hesitation. A sharp pain shot through me, and deep red beads of blood instantly welled up. I smeared the fresh blood from my fingertip, drop by drop, forcefully onto the wedding handkerchief embroidered with mandarin ducks. That red was glaring and resolute. I, Gu Qingxin, swear here. My voice wasn't loud, but carried a heart-stopping calm. Today, my 7-year relationship with Shen Mubai is severed. We will never see each other again in this life. Our bonds of favor and loyalty are broken. After speaking, I fiercely threw that square of blood-stained wedding veil in front of the Ministry of Personnel's gate. Then I turned around, lifted the intricate hem of my dress, and walked step by step towards that black royal carriage. I didn't look back, not even once. The moment I boarded the carriage and the curtain fell, I heard gasps from outside like a crashing tsunami. And all of this had nothing to do with me anymore. The carriage started moving slowly, so smoothly that not a single jolt could be felt. I leaned against the cold wall of the carriage, closed my eyes, and left all the humiliation and disgrace behind me on that long street. The Prince of Genbei's manor and the minister's manor were only 2 streets apart. But to me, it felt as if the carriage had been traveling for half a lifetime. Preparations had long been made within the prince's manor. The servants moved quickly and silently, with no elaborate ceremonies, no bowing or kneeling in a wedding rite. I didn't even see any master of the house other than Xiao Hanyuan, and just like that, wearing a wedding dress that was supposed to belong to someone else, I was sent directly into a bridal chamber decorated with lanterns and streamers, with red candles burning high. The wedding bed was covered with a brocade quilt embroidered with dragons and phoenixes bringing prosperity. And on the table were the nuptial wine and exquisite pastries. The air was filled with the faint scent of ambergris. Everything was impeccably arranged, as if this was always meant to be my final destination. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching the candlelight flicker, my mind a complete blank. The door creaked open and Xiao Hanyuan walked in. He waved his hand to dismiss all the servants and closed the door himself. Only the 2 of us and the swaying candlelight were left in the room. He didn't come closer, just stood a few steps away from me, his deep eyes looking particularly bright in the candlelight. Miss Giyu, today's events were sudden. This prince's action is not out of personal affection, I hope you understand. His voice was as cold as ever, like a piece of fine, cold jade, without a hint of warmth. I raised my head to meet his gaze and answered calmly. I understand your highness's meaning. You need a princess consort to deal with the court and to shut his majesty's wagging tongue. And I need the protection of the Prince of Genbei's mansion to restore my and the Prime Minister's mansion's dignity. This is a transaction. A trace of imperceptible approval flashed in his eyes. It is never tiring to talk to a smart person. Indeed, he nodded. This prince can promise to give you all the honor and decency a princess of Genbei deserves. Within this mansion, no one will dare to bully or slight you. The management of the mansion's household will also be entirely handed over to you. He paused, then added, but this prince is stationed in the northern border year-round and does not believe in love. You and I are only allies mutually dependent on each other. Other than that, this prince will not give you any unrealistic fantasies. These words were both direct and cruel. If it were any other woman who held fantasies about marriage, she would probably be heartbroken. But as it happens, I am not. The last spark of love in my heart had already been completely extinguished during the 3-hour wait in front of the minister's mansion. I accept your highness's conditions. I spoke slowly, my voice devoid of any emotion. I Gu Qingxin am not some daughter flower who can't live without a man. I don't need affection. What I need is a foundation to establish myself, a status where no one will dare to slight me again. I stood up, walked over to him and looked straight into his eyes. I can also promise that I will fulfill my duties as a princess consort, manage the household for you, handle the social connections in the capital, become your most stable support in the imperial court, and will absolutely not cause you any trouble. Our gazes met in mid-air without a shred of romance, only a tacit understanding of having reached an agreement. Very good. The corners of Xiao Hanyuan's lips seemed to curve upwards in an extremely subtle arc so fast that it was impossible to catch. In that case, your highness, please. He picked up the 2 cups of nuptial wine on the table and handed one to me. I took the wine cup. The cold jade was chilling to the touch. We did not link arms, but simply raised our cups individually and drank down the spicy liquor in one go. The wine entered my sorrowful gut, burning my insides with a searing pain. It is getting late. Xiao Hanyuan put down his wine cup. You should rest early. Tomorrow morning, the rewards and congratulatory gifts from the palace and the various manors will be sent over. You'll have a lot to keep you busy. after he finished speaking. He walked straight to the soft couch in the inner chamber, took a thin blanket, and apparently intended to sleep there in his clothes. As I watched his retreating figure, the last bit of awkwardness I felt as a new bride completely dissipated. This is fine too. Without the fetters of emotion, there will be no pointless expectations and disappointments. From now on, I am just Gu Qingxin, Princess Zhenbei. I took off the heavy wedding gown, changed into a light nightgown, extinguished most of the candles, and lay on the wide and cold nuptial bed. The night passed without a word, and also without a dream. Number. Chapter 3. The truth comes to light at dusk. The setting sun was like blood. The tightly shut vermilion gate of the minister's mansion, which had been closed for a day, finally opened slowly. Shen Mubai returned, covered in dust and grass clippings, his face full of exhaustion. He looked at the crowd that had already dispersed in front of the mansion and the utter mess, his brows furrowing in displeasure, and casually explained to the butler who came up to greet him. Qinglu got lost while picking herbs on the mountain. I went to find her. What is the matter? Have the people from the Prime Minister's mansion wait in the side hall. It is not too late to bow now. There wasn't a hint of apology in his tone, only a kind of self-righteous charity, as if his willingness to come back and continue this wedding was already a tremendous grace. The butler's face was deathly pale, his lips trembling, and he pointed to an inconspicuous carriage outside the mansion gate. Stammering, "Young master, the people from the Prime Minister's mansion are still." Shen Mubai looked in the direction he was pointing and saw Mammy Wang from the Prime Minister's residence getting off a carriage. She was my mother's dowry maid, watched me grow up, and is the most loyal of all. Why is it just you? Where is Qingxin? Shen Mubai's tone held a trace of impatience. Is she still throwing a tantrum in the sedan chair? Tell her to get out. Don't miss the auspicious time. Mammy Wang walked up to him, her face devoid of any expression, and her cloudy eyes held an unthawable coldness. She didn't answer his question, but slowly took out a silk handkerchief from her bosom that was my original wedding veil, with a pair of neck-entwined mandarin ducks embroidered on it in gold thread. And at this moment, the eyes of those ducks were stained a hideous red by a startling splash of blood. Young Master Shen. Mammy Wang's voice was old and hoarse, like two pieces of sandpaper rubbing together. My lady had this old servant wait here to return this wedding veil to its original owner. Shen Mubai's face changed as he looked at the bloodied veil, but he still said stubbornly, "What does she mean by this? Trying to scare me with this kind of trick? Tell her to stop fooling around. My lady has already remarried the Prince of Zhenbei at noon." Mammy Wang's voice wasn't loud yet. It was like a clap of thunder, striking Shen Mubai hard on the head. His subsequent words stopped abruptly. The color drained from his face at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning it ashen white as paper. In those eyes, which always held a touch of arrogance and charm, there was for the first time utter disbelief and terror. What did you say?" His voice trembled. "This is impossible, Qingxin. She loved me for 7 years. How could she?" It was as if Nanny Wang hadn't heard his words, continuing on her own, every word like a knife quenched in ice, inflicting a death by 1,000 cuts on his final fantasy. "It is now past the hour of you, which is precisely the auspicious time for the marriage consummation at the prince's mansion. Young Master Shen, you are too late." After she finished speaking, Nanny Wang gently placed that blood-stained handkerchief on his hand, which was frozen in midair, then turned around, and without a single glance back at him, slowly boarded the carriage. Shen Mubai stood frozen on the spot, like a stone statue eroded by wind and rain. He looked down at the glaring red in his palm, as if that red had burned a hole in his hand, the pain making his whole body convulse. It can't be," he muttered to himself, rushing into the mansion like a madman. In the following days, Shen Mubai completely lost his mind. He disregarded his father's attempts to stop him, drunkenly barged into the Prime Minister's residence, and roared questions in front of Mother. I had Nanny Wang pass on the message. From now on, no one from the Shen family is welcome at the Prime Minister's residence. He stumbled again to the front gate of Prince Zhenbei's residence, shouting and yelling. The residence's guards drew the sabers from their waists, the cold blade and the grim, Killing intent sobered him up a bit, and in the end he could only leave unwillingly. I was in the study listening to the steward report on the residents' affairs, when Shen Mubai's curses could be faintly heard coming from outside. "Your Highness, should we do something about that person outside?" Steward Li looked at me, somewhat troubled. I didn't even raise my head, just coolly flipped a page in the ledger and said softly, "Pay him no mind. No disturbances are allowed in front of the prince's residence. If he keeps shouting, charge him with disturbing the residents and send him directly to the capital prefecture." My voice was very calm, so calm that there wasn't a single ripple. Steward Li was taken aback for a moment, then acknowledged the order and left. Soon, the shouting outside stopped. I put down the ledger, walked to the window, and looked at the autumn chrysanthemums blooming in the courtyard, a sense of peace in my heart. Shen Mubai, your accusations, your madness. To me, they are nothing more than a noisy autumn wind outside the window. Once it blows past, it is gone. Shen Mubai failed to get any advantage from me. Instead, he made an even bigger public scene of himself, becoming a complete cautionary tale for the noble young masters of the capital. He quieted down for a few days, but that white moonlight of his, Su Qingluo, couldn't sit still any longer. This afternoon, I was admiring the fish in the garden when a servant came to report, "Your Highness, the princess consort Miss Su from the minister's manor has come to call." My hand, holding the fish food, paused for a moment, then scattered it into the pond, attracting a school of koi to fight over it. "Have her wait in the side hall," I instructed coolly, with no intention of seeing her immediately. I slowly and deliberately finished feeding the entire packet of fish food, then went back to my room to change into a more magnificent dress and put on the head ornaments befitting a princess consort. Only then did I walk towards the side hall at a leisurely pace. Before even entering the door, I could hear the sound of faint, intermittent sobbing from inside. I walked into the hall and saw Su Qinglu, dressed in a plain white dress, wearing no makeup, with 2 streams of clear tears on her face, kneeling on the ground. She truly looked like a pear blossom in the rain, a sight to evoke pity in anyone who saw her. Seeing me enter, she cried even harder, shuffling forward 2 steps as if to hug my legs. "Your Highness, the princess consort, it is all my fault, every last bit of it. Please don't blame Brother Mubai." I shifted my body slightly to avoid her touch, sat down in the main seat, took the hot tea served by the maid, and blew on it gently. "Oh, and what fault is yours?" I asked unhurriedly. Su Qingluo lifted her tear-streaked face and choked out, "Qingluo shouldn't have gone to that darn mountain to pick herbs on the princess consort's wedding day. And I especially shouldn't have carelessly gotten lost, causing Brother Mubai to miss the auspicious time in order to save me. This is all Qingluo's fault. It has nothing to do with Brother Mubai. In his heart, he has you, Your Highness." She spoke with such sincerity, as if she were truly the innocent and kind victim. If I were still the old Gu Qingxin, perhaps I really would have been fooled by her performance. But unfortunately, I am not anymore. I set down my teacup, making a soft sound that interrupted her sobbing tale. "Miss Su," I looked at her, my eyes devoid of any warmth. "Since you know it is your fault, then you should be saying these words to Shen Mubai, to Minister Shen, and telling them not to bother me anymore. Instead of coming to my Prince of Zhenbei's manor to cry and sob, who are you putting on this show for?" Su Qingluo's crying hitched, a flash of astonishment on her face, as if she hadn't expected me to be so direct. I stood up and walked slowly towards her, looking down at her. "You kept saying he had feelings for me, but for you he left me waiting at the minister's mansion gates for 6 hours, making me the laughingstock of the entire capital. Where were you? You kept saying it was all your fault, but you knew that was my wedding day, yet you insisted on getting lost in the wilderness. What was your intention then?" "Su Qingluo, do you really think everyone in this world is as foolish as Shen Mubai, easily fooled by your pitiful act?" Each word of mine was like a knife, tearing away her hypocritical mask. Her face turned from pale to green, her tears forgotten, leaving only embarrassment and panic in her eyes. She probably never imagined that I, usually so gentle, would become so aggressive. I didn't. She tried to argue. "Enough," I interrupted her coldly. Your tricks won't work on me. The only reason I am seeing you today is to tell you something. I leaned in slightly, whispering into her ear, in a voice only we could hear, word by word. Shen Mubai is a man I don't want. If you like him, pick him up and keep him well. Don't let him run onto my territory and bark like a mad dog again. Su Qingluo's body trembled violently, her eyes filled with humiliation and venom. I straightened up, resuming that dignified appearance of a princess consort, and called out towards the door. Summon show Miss Su out. Also, pass on my words, from now on, the Zhenbei Wangfu does not welcome anyone from the minister's mansion. If there is a next time, they will be dealt with for disturbing the prince's mansion and beaten and thrown out directly. Yes, princess consort. Two old matrons came forward, grabbed the limp Su Qingluo from the ground on either side, and dragged her out, ignoring her struggles. I watched her pathetic retreating figure, the corner of my lips curling into a cold sneer. Su Qingluo, do you think your opponent is still Gu Qingxin? No. From the moment I stepped into the Zhenbei Wangfu, your opponent has been the dignity of the entire prince's mansion. And you are simply not worthy. Number. Chapter 4. Karmic cycle after being snubbed by me. Su Qingluo must have gone crying to Shen Mubai again. Shen Mubai's pitiful protective instincts were probably stirred up. After a few days of depression, he actually pulled himself together and threw himself into his official duties, seemingly trying to prove with his political achievements that he could live just fine without me. It is just a pity that he overestimated his own abilities and underestimated the awkward situation his father was facing in the imperial court because of the broken engagement. Soon the opportunity came. When the Ministry of Personnel was assessing the performance of a batch of officials posted externally, a mistake occurred in the part Shen Mubai was responsible for. A corrupt official who should have been dismissed was mistakenly rated as excellent, and the document had already been submitted to the Secretariat. Normally, this might just be a small mistake, but at this moment, it became a vulnerability that could be infinitely magnified. The next day at morning court, a censor from the censorate immediately stepped forward and delivered a verbose impeachment against the Ministry of Personnel for poor judgment and misemployment of personnel, with words so sharp, it was as if he were pointing at Minister Shen's nose and cursing him. Minister Shen's old face flushed a deep purplish red, and kneeling on the ground, he repeatedly claimed he had failed to raise his son properly and had been negligent in his supervision. The emperor sat on the dragon throne, his face as still as water, showing no sign of either pleasure or anger. After court was dismissed, Minister Shen wanted to immediately drag Shen Mubai to the Prime Minister's residence to plead for mercy. After all, father is the head of all officials. As long as he was willing to put in a few good words, the emperor might, for my sake, grant a lighter sentence. But he forgot that mother had already ordered that no one from the Shen family was welcome at the Prime Minister's residence. The Shen father and son were turned away at the door of the Prime Minister's residence, utterly humiliated. In his desperation, Shen Mubai actually lost his mind. He found out that father would be entering the palace the next day to discuss matters with several grand secretaries. So after the meeting ended, he directly blocked father's sedan chair at the palace gates. Father-in-law, he dropped to his knees with a thud, completely ignoring the gazes of the officials coming and going around him. I know I was wrong. I beg you, for Qingxin's sake, please put in a good word for me before His Majesty. I can't let my future be ruined just like this. With that kneel and that shout, he drew everyone's attention. Father sat in the sedan chair, not even lifting the curtain. Only a cold voice came from inside. Vice Minister Shen, you and I are no longer related. I am unworthy of the title, father-in-law. You are on your own now. After saying that, he ordered the sedan carriers to leave directly. Shen Mubai's disgraceful behavior was seen clearly by all his colleagues. For a grown man to pester his former father-in-law at the palace gate for the sake of his career, such an act was truly despicable. This matter quickly reached the emperor's ears. The emperor was already displeased with Shen Mubai for breaking off the engagement, and now seeing him cause a scene at the palace gate, completely losing the dignity of a court official, he flew into a royal rage. In the imperial court the next day, in front of all the civil and military officials, The emperor not only gave Shen Mubai a severe tongue lashing and fined him half a year's salary, but also reprimanded Minister Shen, saying he was lax in managing his household and had failed in raising his son, causing the imperial court to be shamed. With this, the Shen family's prestige in the imperial court plummeted. Those officials who were originally on good terms with the Shen family began to distance themselves one after another, for fear of being implicated. For the first time, the Shen family tasted the feeling of falling from the clouds. And the whole story of all this was told to me by the servants of the prince's mansion as a joke. I just listened quietly, embroidering a handkerchief in my hands with a cedar pattern common in the northern realm, the stitches fine and dense. "Your Highness, don't you feel gratified?" The little maid who was telling me about this asked cautiously, seeing that I had little reaction. I looked up at her and smiled faintly. "Gratified? If an ant were struggling to its death by your foot, would you be moved by it, or feel gratified?" I said softly. The little maid shook her head, as if she only half understood. "Exactly." I lowered my head and continued with my needlework. "I haven't cared about him for a long time now. His rise and fall are nothing more than a passing cloud to me, not worth mentioning. My retaliation didn't even require me to act personally the change in my status, and his own repeated foolish actions were enough to topple the first domino of his family's decline. Shen Mubai, do you think all you've lost is a wife? No, you've lost the entire future of your family, and you are still completely unaware of it." Time flew by, and the autumn air grew thicker. It has been over a month since Xiao Hanyuan left the capital, leading his personal guards back to the northern realm to handle military affairs. For this past month, life in the prince's mansion has been calm and uneventful. I managed the household affairs in an orderly manner, and in my spare time, I would read or do some embroidery, so the days were quite pleasant. Although Xiao Hanyuan and I didn't exchange letters, every 10 days he would send a trusted subordinate back with some specialties from the northern borderlands. Sometimes rare furs, sometimes exotic fruits. The items weren't valuable, but it was a silent gesture, telling everyone in the capital who was watching the Zhenbei Wangfu he cared a great deal for this new Wangfei of his. I understood his intentions and reciprocated in kind. Knowing he came from a military background and inevitably had some old injuries, I personally went to the apothecary to find some mild, nourishing medicinal herbs, made them into medicinal packets, and entrusted them to his subordinate to take back to the northern borderlands. Between us, it was very much like two business partners with a tacit understanding, maintaining a delicate balance. On this day, I was checking the procurement accounts for a batch of winter clothes when the sound of horse hooves came from outside the mansion. It was Xiao Hanyuan. He was back 3 days earlier than his expected return date. It was already evening when he returned, covered in the dust of his journey. There was a hint of fatigue between his brows, but his eyes were still as sharp as an eagle's. I went to the mansion gate to greet him and curtsied according to etiquette. "Your Highness has had a long journey." He glanced at me, nodded, and walked straight into the mansion. For the evening meal, I specially had the kitchen stew the mutton soup he loves to ward off, the cold and warm his stomach. We were still silent at the dinner table. He ate very quickly, as if he had been hungry for a long time. After the meal, I thought he would go to the study to handle official business, but he followed me back to the bedroom. I was a little surprised but didn't ask much more, and went to prepare for my bath on my own. "Here, this is for you." He suddenly took out an embroidered box from his embrace and handed it over. I opened it and saw, inside lay a smooth, warm jade stone, its color like mutton fat, giving off a soft glow under the candlelight, warming to the touch, as if it were alive. "This is the warm jade from the Northern Territory." His voice seemed a little softer than usual. "Wearing it can calm your nerves and help you sleep. I see the light in your room is always on very late." My heart skipped a beat without warning. I thought there was only transaction and calculation between us, but I didn't expect him to notice my habit of being restless at night. "Thank you, Your Highness." I accepted the embroidered box and thanked him sincerely. He let out a hum, then turned and went to the couch. I held the warm jade, rubbing it in my hands for a long time. The jade's warmth seemed to travel from my fingertips, little by little, into my heart. That night, I placed the warm jade by my pillow and slept soundly. Number. Chapter 5. Threads of affection secretly sprout the next day when I got up. I found he was no longer in the room. However, a note was left on the table. In his strong, bold handwriting, 2 days for tomb maintenance, no need for social calls. The red leaves west of the city are beautiful. You can go for a stroll. I stared at the note for a long time. What is this? A friendly reminder between allies in the end. I took his advice and prepared a carriage to go to the maple forest west of the city. The maple forest in late autumn was as beautiful as a painting, with layers of trees dyed in color and red leaves like fire. I walked on the path covered with fallen leaves, feeling more relaxed than ever before. On a hillside, I unexpectedly saw Xiao Hanyuan. He had changed out of his royal robes and was wearing a sleek, practical outfit, standing all alone under a giant maple tree, gazing into the distance. Hearing my footsteps, he turned his head, and upon seeing me, he didn't seem surprised. "The scenery here is pretty nice, huh?" he asked. It is beautiful." I walked to his side and stood shoulder to shoulder with him. Neither of us spoke, just quietly watched the scenery at the foot of the mountain. The wind blew and the red leaves rustled down like a magnificent rain. "You can't see scenery like this in the northern realm," he suddenly said. "There is only an endless snowfield and a cold wind that makes your bones ache. But the stars are brightest there," I said softly. "I once read a description of the northern realm in an ancient book." He turned his head and looked at me, a little surprised. I smiled. "Read it in a book." He smiled too. This time it was a genuine, relaxed smile. "Gu Qingxin," he suddenly called my name, instead of Princess Consort or Miss Gu. "You are much more interesting than I imagined." My face felt a little hot. At that moment, I suddenly felt that the relationship between us seemed to be slowly developing from a pure transaction towards another, unknown direction. And yet, I didn't resist it in the slightest. The subtle atmosphere with Xiao Hanyuan didn't last very long before it was shattered by another foolish act of Shen Mubai's. Ever since being publicly reprimanded by the emperor last time, Shen Mubai's days at the Ministry of Personnel had become increasingly difficult. The ostracism from his colleagues and the cold shoulder from his superiors made him suffer immensely. He was eager to achieve something to restore his reputation, but he hit a wall everywhere and repeatedly made mistakes. One day, while sorting through old belongings, he came across some past letters. He suddenly remembered something 3 years ago. He was just a minor 7th rank director. Due to his youthful arrogance, he had offended the only son of the Grand Commandant at a banquet. That dandy, relying on his family's status, made trouble for him at every turn, and even threatened to have him lose his official post. Just when he was at his wit's end, things suddenly took a turn for some unknown reason. The Grand Commandant's son actually came to his door to make peace, and the matter was thus dropped. At the time, he had asked who had helped him from behind the scenes. But Su Qingluo's father, an 8th-rank compiler serving in the Hanlin Academy, just gave a vague smile and told him not to ask any more questions. Thinking back on it now, how could a gentle scholar like Compiler Su make the arrogant and domineering son of the Grand Commandant bow his head? Behind this, it must have been Su Qingluo who went to great lengths to mediate on his behalf, and she might have even paid a great price. Shen Mubai was moved to pieces by this idea of his. He immediately rushed to Su Qingluo's residence. At that time, Su Qingluo's reputation was damaged because of the matter of seducing her future brother-in-law, and her life had also become quite difficult. Upon seeing Shen Mubai, she immediately put on a tearful, on the verge of crying appearance. Shen Mubai held her hand, his eyes red-rimmed, and asked about the old matter from 3 years ago. "Qingluo, tell me, was the incident with the Grand Commandant's son you? Was it you who begged your father for my sake, and even sacrificed something?" Su Qingluo was stunned for a moment upon hearing this. Then an imperceptible glint flashed in her eyes. She neither directly admitted nor denied it, merely lowering her head, dabbing the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief, and choked out, "Brother Mubai, let's not bring up the past anymore. As long as you are well, it is nothing for Qingluo to suffer a little." These vague words of hers, a tactic of feigning retreat to advance, sounded to Shen Mubai like nothing less than an admission. His heart immediately twisted in pain, and he pulled Su Qingluo into his embrace. "Qingluo, I am the one who has wronged you. I actually never knew you sacrificed so much for me." He trembled all over with agitation. "I was truly blind, mistaking Elmwood for a pearl, giving you the cold shoulder, and instead went and fawned over that venomous, black-hearted woman." In his arms, a smug smile appeared on Su Qingluo's lips, but she was still feigning protest. "Brother Mubai, you don't say that. Her Highness, the princess consort. She was probably just confused for a moment." "She is not confused. She is vicious," Shen Mubai said through gritted teeth. "I've finally seen it clearly, in this whole world. Only you, Su Qingluo, are the one who is truly sincere with me. Rest assured, I, Shen Mubai, swear here and now that I will never fail you in this life." This self-directed, deeply affectionate drama quickly spread throughout the capital city. The servants were telling me about this as a joke while I was trimming a pot of kaffir lily. With a snip, I cut off a withered yellow leaf. "Princess consort. My personal maid." Cure, her little face flushed red with anger. "That Su Qingluo is so shameless. What happened 3 years ago was clearly—" "Cure," I interrupted her. Cure immediately fell silent. I tossed the yellow leaves I cut off into the bamboo basket by my feet, and said lightly, "Let them be, people. Always only want to believe what they want to believe. Since he has decided that a wolf in sheep's clothing is his savior, then let him hug that wolf and fall into the hunter's trap together." Queer nodded, seeming to understand yet not fully comprehending. I looked at the well-pruned clivia, my heart completely at peace. "Shen Mubai, your stupidity has once again set a new low for me. You thought you found the truth, found true love, but in reality, you've just personally set fire to the very last straw that could have saved your life. Next, just wait for the good show." Sure enough, before long, the truth came to the surface. Shen Mubai, while sorting through his deceased mother's belongings wanting to see if there was anything valuable he could sell off, found a thick stack of letters in a locked pearwood box. Most of them were letters exchanged between his mother and the madams of various manors in the capital. He casually flipped through them, but at the bottom of the pile of letters, he discovered an unsent one. On the envelope were the words, "For Prime Minister, Brother Gu, to open personally." It was written by my mother to my father. His heart leaped, and as if possessed, he opened the letter. The handwriting on the letter was his mother's familiar, elegant, small, regular script. "Brother Gu, my brother. To see these words is to see you in person. My young son, Mubai, is ill-behaved. 3 years ago, he offended the Grand Marshal's son due to a slip of the tongue after drinking, which nearly brought about a great disaster. Fortunately, my esteemed brother, you secretly intervened and mediated on his behalf, allowing him to escape that calamity and save his future. For this great kindness, my husband and I are endlessly grateful and will forever hold it in our hearts. I hear that your daughter Qingxin is intelligent, virtuous, and gentle, possessing the air of a lady from a great family. That she can be joined in matrimony with my son is truly Mubai's fortune, and also a blessing for our Shen family. When the two are wed in the future, I will surely treat Qingxin as my own, and will absolutely not let her suffer the slightest grievance." The letter wasn't long, but it felt like Shen Mubai had spent a century reading it. His hands started to tremble uncontrollably, and the letter slipped from his shaking fingertips, fluttering down to the ground. 3 years ago, the Grand Commandant's son, the Prime Minister's manor, acted in secret. So that is how it was. It turns out the one who saved him from dire straits back then wasn't some compiler Sue at all, but his former father-in-law, whom he had always looked down upon and even been somewhat wary of, Gu Zhenbang. And the reason Gu Zhenbang stepped in was entirely for Gu Qingxin's sake. The Su Qingluo sacrificing for him, enduring humiliation and bearing heavy burdens that he had always believed in was all fake. He was just taking credit for an immense achievement, claiming someone else's kindness as his own. And he, the biggest idiot in the world, was actually moved to tears by it. And for it, he turned against his real benefactor, hurting her until she was black and blue. To have such a devoted daughter-in-law is truly Mubai's fortune, and the Shen family's blessing. His mother's words were like a red-hot branding iron, fiercely branded onto his heart. He was wrong. He was terribly wrong. He personally pushed the Shen family's good fortune, the Shen family's future, the Shen family's lifeline out the door, and then viciously stomped on it 10,000 times. Aha! A shrill, inhuman-sounding scream came from the study. Su Qingluo heard the sound and impatiently pushed the door open. Coming in. What are you screaming for again? Before she could finish her sentence, she was stunned by the scene in front of her. Shen Mubai was kneeling on the ground, his eyes bloodshot, looking crazed. He snatched the inkstone from the table and fiercely smashed it against his own head. I am not human. I was blind. I am a beast, he roared as he smashed, fresh blood flowing from the corner of his forehead all over his face. Su Qingluo scared out of her wits, screaming as she ran out. But Shen Mubai, as if he couldn't feel any pain, just madly punished his own foolishness and blindness in the cruelest way. His mental world completely collapsed at this moment. The truth, sometimes, hurts more than the sharpest knife. Number epilogue, each to their own path after the truth came to light. Shen Mubai completely went mad. He no longer cared about the trivial messes in the mansion, nor did he pay any attention to Su Qingluo's crying and fussing. He had only one thought: to find me and beg for my forgiveness. It was a rainy night in late autumn, with driving wind and rain, and a biting cold. Shen Mubai dropped everything and stumbled to the front gate of the Prince of Zhenbei's mansion. He didn't call for the gate to be opened, nor did he roar. He just, with a thud, knelt down ramrod straight before the mansion's tightly shut, vermilion lacquered main gate. He was wearing thin clothes, letting the ice-cold rain drench him from head to toe. The rainwater, mixed with the blood seeping from the unhealed wound on his forehead, flowed continuously down his pale cheeks. He just knelt there, motionless, like a statue of despair. Inside the prince's mansion, the lights were bright and it was as warm as spring. I am packing for Xiao Hanyuan, who is about to depart for his northern fiefdom. The emperor's suspicion is, after all, the nature of a ruler. Xiao Hanyuan has stayed in the capital for too long, and would inevitably stir up some unnecessary trouble. Proactively requesting to return to his fiefdom is his strategy of retreating in order to advance. And as his princess consort, I naturally have to go with him. The person kneeling outside has been there for 2 hours now. Xiao Hanyuan embraced me from behind, his chin resting gently on my shoulder, his voice low and warm. I acknowledged with a sound and placed a folded fox fur cloak into the chest. The rain is pouring. If he keeps kneeling, I am afraid someone's going to die, he said again. Should I have someone take care of him? His words carried a hint of imperceptible killing intent. The deal with, he mentioned, was definitely not as simple as just chasing him away. My hands paused, and I shook my head. No need. I turned around, looked at him, and said softly, let him kneel. When he has kneeled to the point of despair, kneeled until he understands that some people and some things, once missed, are missed for a lifetime, never to be gotten back, he will naturally leave. Xiao Hanyuan looked at me, emotions churning in his dark eyes. He reached out, gently caressed my cheek, and tucked a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Do you really not care at all anymore? He asked. I met his gaze and nodded seriously. Yes, it is not out of spite, nor am I just trying to be strong. It is from the bottom of my heart. I truly don't care anymore. He just looked at me like that for a long time, then slowly lowered his head. A gentle, slightly tentative kiss landed on my lips. My whole body stiffened, but I didn't push him away. Outside the window, the wind and rain raged with flashes of lightning and rumbles of thunder. Shen Mubai's hoarse shouts, mixed with the sound of the wind and rain, faintly drifted in. Qingxin, I was wrong. Come out and see me, just for a moment. Qingxin, I am begging you, forgive me. But inside the window, the red candles flickered. Xiao Hanyuan's kiss gradually deepened, carrying a domineering and lingering quality that couldn't be refused. I closed my eyes, slowly raised my hands, and wrapped them around his neck. Shen Mubai, did you hear that? Your repentance, your suffering to me. is nothing but a sad song accompanying my happiness right now. Our lives, from the moment I stepped out of the bridal sedan, were destined to never intersect again. This night, someone was destined to be sleepless. Someone was agonizing in purgatory. Someone was sinking among the clouds. Shen Mubai knelt in front of the prince's manor for a whole night. The next morning, the rain stopped. When he was found, he was already delirious from a fever, his whole body burning hot, and he was unconscious. The people from the Shangshu manor carried him back. From then on, he truly went mad. After a serious illness, he was sometimes lucid, sometimes confused. When he was lucid, he would hold that letter from his mother and read it over and over again for a whole day without eating or drinking, his face covered in tears. When he was confused, he would put on the bright red wedding attire that he had long forgotten at the bottom of a chest and pace back and forth at the old site of the Shangshu manor, grabbing anyone he met to ask, "Have you seen my bride? She is marrying me today." The Shen family was completely ruined. Shangshu Shen was dismissed from office by the emperor on the charges of failing to manage his household strictly and failing to discipline his son properly. And the Shangshu manor was also sold off to pay off debts. As for Su Qingluo, I heard that after the Shen family's downfall, she took the last valuable things from the mansion and disappeared. Some said she ran off with a rich merchant heading south, while others said she ended up in a brothel with a miserable end. But none of this had anything to do with me anymore. A month later, on a clear and crisp autumn day, Xiao Hanyuan and I set off on the official road to the northern border. The hustle and bustle of the capital city was left far behind us. The horse carriage was spacious and comfortable. Afraid that I would be bored on the journey, Xiao Hanyuan had specially prepared many books and chess manuals. Most of the time, he was handling military affairs from the northern border, and I would just sit quietly to the side reading my book. Occasionally we would play a game of chess or chat about the local customs and culture of the northern border. There weren't many sweet nothings, but there was a sense of quiet and stable comfort. The further north we went, the more vast and high the sky became. One day, the convoy stopped at a post station to rest. I got out of the carriage and stretched, and a breeze carrying the fresh scent of grass and trees blew past, brushing the tips of my hair and making me feel refreshed and relaxed. Xiao Hanyuan walked to my side and, from behind, draped a thick cloak over my shoulders. "The winds in the northern border are fierce. Be careful not to catch a cold." His voice was deep and gentle. I turned my head to look at him, in the sunlight. His stern profile seemed to have softened a lot. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I shook my head and smiled. "It is nothing. I just feel that things are great like this right now." He held my hand. His palm was broad and warm, covered with a thin layer of calluses, but it made me feel incredibly at ease. It will be even better in the future. He looked at me and said, word by word. I looked at my reflection in his deep eyes and nodded forcefully. "Yeah, my real life has only just begun. The grievances and affections of the capital city, Shen Mubai's madness and regret, Su Qingluo's intricate scheming, all seemed like matters from a past life, vague and distant. I, Gu Qingxin, once treated my life as a high-stakes gamble, betting it on a man who wasn't worth it, and lost everything completely. But thankfully, heaven gave me a chance to start over. This time, I will no longer live for anyone else. I live only for myself. The road ahead is the 1,000 miles of wind and snow of the Northern Territory, an unknown challenge. But by my side, there is someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with me. This is enough." The end.